Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Bill Scoble. I'm the fire chief here in town, and I just wanted to welcome you all. Thank you for coming. For those of you who got something in your mailbox, there was a reason for it. You'll find out why. But I just want to acknowledge the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, which is headquartered right here in Quincy, their national headquarters, is the driving force behind the Firewise program. When I spoke to Aline, emailed me first and said that she would like to do this. And we went back and forth, and then I handed it off to my public education guys, who are firefighters, who also double as pub ed people. They go out to schools, and they work with the seniors, and they do events such as this. And so they've coordinated a lot of it. And then we also are lucky enough to have Josh Nigro here, who is one of our district state fire wardens, who's very aware of the program, has worked with some of his communities down the Cape where they truly have a brush fire problem. And so he has come along as well, and we just want to give you some quick information. And what you're going to hear from him is, yes, it can happen in Westwood, yes, it has happened in Westwood, and it does happen in Westwood. So with that, I'd like to introduce Lee Barrett, who is a Westwood resident, and actually a neighbor of mine. She didn't know until she contacted me, and she's going to take it from here. So thank you for coming.
Good evening. I'm glad to see everyone here tonight. We weren't sure it was either going to be a lot of people or very few, but it turned out to be right in the middle. Nice to see. Years ago, when I first heard about the Firewise program and the information that it has for homeowners, I thought how wonderful it would be to have this information available to Westwood homeowners, because it's not generally known that your landscaping choices or your construction material choices can actually impact whether your home is destroyed by fire or, singed. And little did I know that it was an email to Chief Scoble that all that it took to bring the information here to the community. Our speakers tonight have a wide range of experience and can offer insightful ways to minimize fire damage to our homes. And be sure to check out the brochures and handouts on the table in the back. There's a lot of good information there, and there's a lot of good information on the internet. Because in researching for the handouts this evening, you can't help but Google, and all kinds of things will show up. And let's see. So be sure to do that. And our first speakers tonight are from the Westwood Fire Department. Lieutenant Andy Mahan and firefighter John Cook are not only public educators, as Chief Scoble mentioned, working in the schools and with the elderly. They also work their regular shifts as firefighters, so they've had hands-on experience with brush fires and just how damaging they can be. So, Andy and John.
Thank you. I think it's actually just going to be me. Like she said, I'm a lieutenant at the fire department working in the public education and also on shift as well. This here is a map of Westwood, and these three arrows are the areas we targeted the most. This is Hale and all the neighborhoods that back up to Hale. This is 109 right here. This is an area called Satan's Kingdom. 109, and over here is Hartford Street. And this right there, that is Sandy Valley Road and all the woods and neighborhoods that back up to that. Those are our biggest areas of concern in town because they're the most heavily wooded areas. These are just a few pictures of those areas. You can see there's a ton of fuel in there from all the dead limbs and everything, and there's layers of dead leaves that have been building up over the years, and especially this year with the drought this year, it hasn't gotten any water, so this stuff is extremely dry. These are just some stats from the state of Massachusetts. Over the last 10 years, there's been 447 building fires that started outside in some sort of vegetation. Those accounted for 26 fire department injuries, 5 civilian injuries, 1 civilian death, and over $22 million in property loss. Just last year, there was 57 incidents, and that accounted for $7.5 million of property loss. Just last year in Westwood, we had just this year rather, we've had 2 of these. So landscape choices is one of the biggest steps you can make to prevent this from happening. On the right, we have a hardscape with the rocks, and on the left is the mulch. The rocks aren't going to support burning or any type of fire that could spread to the house. We want you to have some space in between the mulch and the combustibles. NFPA 1 is the fire code now in Massachusetts, and it recommends 18 inches between the mulch and any part of the combustible building. That's technically just for building units with 6 or more units or commercial buildings, or it's a good rule of thumb to use. We want you to keep some space in between the shrubs, because if a fire starts in the mulch and starts one shrub, we want it to contain to that one shrub. We don't want it to spread to another one. I'm sure you guys have all seen a Christmas tree burn. They go up in a matter of seconds if that shrub is dead, and they put off a ton of heat. And the smoking materials, be careful disposing of smoking materials in the mulch. That's the #1 cause of mulch fires. And even if you guys don't smoke, nobody in your house smokes, you have to think of if you have a landscaper, a contractor, a painter, anybody working at your house that might smoke, they might throw one in there, not even thinking about it, and that could start it. So this can happen to you. This was actually in Westwood this year. This started outside as a mulch fire. And it's hard to see from this picture, but they actually had the 18-inch spacing. This lady said she smelled a burning smell for over a day. So it was sitting burning in the mulch, smoldering, and it finally found its way to a dead shrub. So when that dead shrub ignited, it lit that back portion of the house up. This lady was really lucky. She was an elderly woman home alone, and she had no idea this was going on. There was actually a contractor working next door, and he ran over with the garden hose and was able to put it out before it extended in and caused too much damage. This family wasn't as lucky. This was a few years ago on the Islington side of town. This also started in some mulch out front. It got the porch going and eventually went inside the house. This went to 3 alarms. The whole house was gutted, and this house ended up had to be torn down and replaced. And actually, one of our off-duty firefighters lived next door, and he went inside the house and got everybody out. So what can we do to prevent this? You guys are here tonight, so you guys are doing the first step, educating yourself. Out back, we have a printout of some online resources, some websites you can visit, and also some contact phone numbers. So those are all out back, if you want to grab those on the way out. And then the other thing we're going to do in conjunction with Josh and the DCR, if anybody's concerned with their house, we're going to come around and offer a risk assessment visit. So we'll come around, see where we can make improvements, make recommendations to you so your home can be safer. And there's a sign-up sheet out back for that, just your name, address, and phone number, and then we'll be in touch with you and we'll schedule a day that we can come out. And this is just the contact we have out back. If you want to snap a picture of this, feel free, and like I said, there's printouts. So with that, I'll have Josh come up and start his portion of it.
Thank you. So I'm going to do my presentation a little bit differently. Yes. Okay. So my presentation will be as if you guys were firefighters and I was given a class on responding to a fire in the urban interface. And some of the things that we look for as firefighters when we have to fight a fire in the woods next to somebody's home, some of the different things that we look for. My name is Josh Nigro, fire warden for DCR. I cover the Cape and Islands, but I am a local. I grew up just down the street of the town of Needham, so I do know the town of Westwood and some of the challenges that are there. I've also worked for DCR in Norfolk County and been to many fires in the area. And the Bureau of Forest Fire Control, we've been around since 1911. Our 3 main jobs is prevention, which is what we're doing today with the Firewise program, some detection, which is our fire towers. Suppression will come out and will assist the fire departments with putting the fires out with some of our specialized equipment and coming out and doing some training with the firefighters. So when we talk about fuels that you'll see here in the town of Westwood, we talk about grass, we call it our 1 hour fuel, because it takes 1 hour of direct sunlight to dry those fuels out to make them ready for combustion. So that mulch, that grass, 1 hour of direct sunlight. So a day like the other day where we had a little bit of rain in the morning, when that sun comes out, those fuels will dry right out, and we can actually have fires by the afternoon. And then our shrub, which is our, some of our oak woodlands, some of our scrub oak, that's our 10-hour fuels. 10 hours of direct sunlight will have those fuels dried out and ready to burn. And because of the drought and some of the defoliation, because some of our insects, a lot of leaves have been missing, and those fuels are really dry, ready for combustion. That's why we've had so many fires. And then the other thing, those fires will get really deep, up to a foot into the ground. So when we go out to put these fires out, we just can't put a little bit of water into it. We have to get in there with hand tools, dig those fires up, and get them up. So when we talk about the wildland urban interface, there's three that we go. It's an environment where structures and environment meet. So pretty much the town of Westwood and different places in town. The three that we go is mixed interface. So taken from any of our fire towers, like the Dover Fire Tower, this is pretty much what you're going to see. It's just a sea of green where you see the little houses intermixed in there. Included in place, which is isolated wildland within an urban area. So this is right down the street in Hyde Park, Stony Brook Reservation. As you can see, it's just all woods with those homes all up against it. And then we have our classic interface. This is actually a picture of our state forest over the vineyard. 5,000 acres of unearthed fuel, all against that subdivision with, you got a couple thousand homes right there. So wildfire coming right out of there. So how it begins, somebody will be up in the fire tower, they'll see that smoke, they'll line it up. We'll call the local department, we'll call Westwood, and they'll come out, and this is what they might see. Some smoke and stuff coming out from the backyard. Or even something like this from out in Colorado, or it could be even just a little grass fire in the backyard. So it's time to make some decisions. So we need to do a size up. So our first thing is life safety, making sure we get everybody out of there. And then make sure we get the fire out. And this is kind of this big myth that we're losing all these homes because of this gigantic wave of fire coming out of the woods into the neighborhoods. This is actually not how we lose homes. It's actually the embers that are generated from these fires. And these embers can go up to a mile in front of some of these fires. And I'll show you in a little bit. So when you're thinking about your homes, think about some of these common ignition points. Where can these embers get into and fester? Flammable roof coverings, unscreened vents, windows, or holes, open doors, windows, or crawl space. So just this home right here, even the gutters. Where are those embers going to land? Wooden decks, patios, and stacked wood. Picture on the right of that deck, that was actually just a hammock chair that was on the deck. Ember got into it, caught the chair on fire, chair fell onto the deck, and luckily the firefighters were able to see that, able to save that home. Gutters and roofs full of debris, especially in Westwood, we have a lot of pine trees, so where are those pine needles falling and dropping? Fire faucets of your house, and then areas under the porches and even patio covers. So the house right there on the right looks really good, but all those leaves and stuff get underneath that deck. And it's not just houses, anything in your yard, car window being open, those embers will be able to get into. So this is the Waldo Canyon fire out in Colorado. This was 346 houses that were destroyed by fire in just 8 hours. And if you notice, all the little orange and red ones that were destroyed, they weren't just all right up against the woods. So if your neighborhood might be a little bit further away, within that mile, where are those embers going to be able to land? So just because you're right not next to it doesn't mean you might be affected. So this is Mirror Lake Court, another picture from that fire in Waldo Canyon, and this is the after. So when we pull up to the house and we have to triage, if we have a large fire, we might only have 2 or 3 fire engines, but we have to protect the whole neighborhood. So we have kind of 3 categories that we go in, those that need little or no attention, those that we might be able to do a little prep, and those that are completely hopeless. So some of the factors that we think about is the fuel's making significant runs in live fuels, and there's no clearance from around the home. Fire behavior is extreme, or having numerous spot fires, which is caused by those embers where they're landing. Water supply will not last as long as the fire threat. So if we only have 1 fire truck to that house, how much water do we have to actually put that fire out? Extreme fire dictates that we leave, that we're not going to be able to sit in that cul-de-sac. There's a lot of places in Westwood, it's just one way in and one way out. You know, we do not want to risk our people getting hurt up there. The roof is more than a quarter involved. And if we show up to a house and that roof, we're not really going to be able to do anything. We need to then go out and look at some other houses. There's fire inside the structure, so if we pull out, we've got a big brush fire, there's already fire in the home, we might not be able to do anything with that home, so we're going to go to that next home where we might be able to make a difference. The arrival time of other resources. You know, a day that we're having brush fires just in the town of Westwood, there's probably going to be other fires in the neighboring communities, so they might not have those resources available. So what can we do? And this is how we set up. We want to be able to back our truck into the driveway. We want to be able to take 200 feet of hose and actually get around the house. This is kind of how it would look right here. And as you can see, the embers are kind of falling down. We're trying to hose those down. And here we are actually doing it at a drill that we did here at Cape Cod. So we might actually go and spray a house down, move to that next home. So what we need from the public is defensible space, which is what the Firewise program is. So we got 3 zones that we talked about. The structured ignition zone, which is everything right next to the house, that fire break zone, and then the reduced fuel zone. So when we go out and do our assessments, we'll be looking at some of these things around the home and try to make it a little bit safer. And then just some of the basic things that we want to make sure that we're doing. You know, the big thing we noticed just driving around Westwood was just the sign numbers on the street. Are we able to find the house? You know, some of us set back a little bit further. You know, everybody has a different place where they put their home numbers on the street. You know, just having a garden hose attached to your home if we need additional water. You know, removing some of the ladder fuels away from the trees. So we call ladder fuels anything from about ground level to about 8 feet, because we don't want that fire transitioning. And here's that Firewise website that we talked about. Here's a fire that we went to, and we actually had a little bit before the fire got there. And here we are cutting some of the trees away from the house. Again, this is very labor intensive. And then we actually had to make a whole fire break against that house. And you know, if we came up to this house right here, there's some things that we could do. It's savable. You know, we might have to rake some of the leaves away. Might have to clean off that roof, screen up some of those vents, but it is. Versus this home right here might be a little bit more difficult. You know, a lot more stuff in the yard, stuff attached to the home. You know, if we only had 15 minutes before that fire front was going to get there, we're going to be working a little bit harder. Versus this home right here with the thatched roof. The homeowner made a choice there. We got a lot of those embers that'll make our job a little bit harder. And here's just some of these fires that we have. You know, we don't lose a lot of houses. We do lose a lot of outbuildings. So we should also think about that when we look at your yard. We shed out the woods, maybe a barn, and making sure we clean up around those things too. So what would be next is we'll be sending out some sheets to sign up for a home assessment. And we'd come out with our DCR and our partners at Westwood Fire. We'll do those assessments. Don't necessarily have to be there. And then what we'll do after that is we'll do some sort of open house like this tonight, where you can come meet with us. We'll give you the results, give you some few suggestions and things you can do. And then I think in the planning stage is some sort of chipper day, community chipper day, where we'll take a weekend, we bring everything to the side of the road, we'll be able to get rid of some of that stuff. And the other big point is this is all a team effort between the town of Westwood, the fire department, the DPW, natural resources, the landowners, the homeowners, and NFPA. Everybody working together is what makes this very successful. what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna do a quick video. This is from a fire in Colorado for a home that was actually Firewise. And you'll see the firefighters actually doing structural protection on it.
Is approaching this house that the strike team has been assigned to protect, and they are in position and ready to go to keep this house from catching on fire. You see that the fire is trying to creep up into the trees, but for the most part, this part of the fire was actually a creeping grass fire. Okay, the firefighter is now managing the fuels here by raking them up so they don't travel into the mulch area. And our crew is trying to do everything they can to manage the property here before the fire arrives. So they're going to make sure that if there's a gas grill out there, that gas bottle is not out. Here they saw some patio furniture out here, outdoor patio furniture, so they're stacking it up here so it's not spread out all over the place and catches on fire. They're stacking up in one area where they can protect that and make sure that the fire doesn't ignite that. And you see the fire starting to approach here. This is on the side of the house called the Delta sides. The firefighter is now standing, waiting for the fire to arrive to him. He's at the edge of the mulch, and where the grass meets the mulch, he's going to make sure the fire doesn't travel past that line. And he's keeping his head on a swivel and watching for the fire in all directions. Now you see that firefighter at the back of the house here. He's on the, what they call the Charlie side again. And he's waiting on the fire to arrive to him. Smoke is going to be produced in lots of copious amounts. And you'll see the fire starting to creep to him, roughly at about, looks like about 6 inches every second. The winds are starting to pick up now, and you see a few embers blow across. They're cold embers, but nonetheless, visibility starts getting poor. What the video can't convey to you is that there's a lot of heat being blown in towards that firefighter. As the fire and the heat are coming to him, he has his personal protective equipment on. He also has a heat shield, face shield that is on his face to help filter out the smoke and the hot gases that are coming to him. He's saving all his resources here. What we're trying to do is allow the fire to burn out all the fuel around the house and let it blow right on by, and then we don't have to worry about that reigniting. So we're saving our water resources for when we really, really do need them. And we're just protecting the deck here and making sure that this fire doesn't get into the mulch. Now you see that the fire is trying to travel up the trees, but the homeowner did a good job of trimming those trees back up to about 10 feet so the branches don't catch on fire, the low-hanging branches. Managing the trees like this will keep the fire from spreading into the crown of the trees, which is very bad. And now the fire is starting to burn up to the mulch, and then lots of smoke starting to be produced. I'm taping this from behind the hot tub on the back of the deck, trying to keep myself from having to be subjected to too much heat, and mostly my camera. And the smoke comes, and it's pretty much a whiteout. Now this is looking on the other side of the hot tub. I decided to move out of the way here. The firefighter is now applying a small amount of water right where the fire has met up with the mulch. The fire has now passed through, and it's done exactly what we wanted it to do, and that is burn around the house and leave the house intact. I'm shooting now at an angle from where the fire did approach. So this is already burnt out area. So you can see how the wind is picked up. But this is how the fire traveled towards the house. I'm just trying to give you a perspective on how it did. And so everything is nice and black here, and that's what we want. We don't want a bunch of unburned fuel here. And now the strike team is doing a little bit of mop-up action. Now we're using the water resources to make sure that the fire is dead out as it butts up against the mulch, because the mulch is very flammable, and that's not a good thing to have right next to your house, because the fire will wick right into the house and burn the house down. So guys are on the Bravo side now, and they are pulling up their hose And then they're going to do a walk around here in just a minute, 360 degree. In the meantime, they're going to make sure that everything that's buttoned up to this mulch is dead out. And they'll check that with the back of their hand. Make sure that it is cold and dead out. And that way we don't have to worry about this rekindling. They're loading up their hose and ready to move on to the next assignment, next house to save. Now you can see that sometimes almost total whiteout, where you couldn't see over the hood of the vehicle, and yet the fire is burning up against the road. But they're moving on to their next assignment and ready to protect more structures. In 5.5 minutes, you've just seen what it took approximately 2.5 hours to do, and that's structure protection at the Black Forest Fire.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thanks, Josh. Swap this over for you. Yeah. Next, we'll hear from Michelle Steinberg and Faith Berry from the NFPA.
Thanks so much. Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Michelle Steinberg. I've worked at the National Fire Protection Association in Quincy since 2002, and I was very excited when Aileen came to us as part of something we're doing internally in our association to get to know what each other does, and I hope you all thank her later for all the great information she's been able to gather for you. And I'm sure you're concerned about it. You're thinking, oh, I don't want to live in Colorado. That looks terrible. But that's a great perspective on what it actually takes to protect a home. And they did compliment the homeowner about, they limbed up the trees, but you saw how much mulch was out there. And if those firefighters hadn't been standing there ready to take care of that house, what would have happened? So I basically have brought along my big guns, which is my friend Faith Berry, who works with me at the NFPA. She spent about 30 years in California, has been a wildland firefighter and a park ranger, and has worked with a lot of communities to take some of the fear out of this. This is very impressive, and we don't want people to walk away scared, but be ready to be prepared. And the really easy, simple things you can do around your home and in your neighborhood to prevent home loss and destruction. We know, just talking about this mulch issue, it's a big issue in Massachusetts. We may not get these dramatic, big-scale fires, but if it's a fire that burns your house down, it's a disaster for you. So we want to prevent that. So without further ado, please welcome Faith.
Thank you. The picture that we have in this slide is actually from New Jersey. So that's in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, and that was sent to us by the state forester in New Jersey. So you can see we have that potential. I was at the forest there in Plymouth, and you have a similar type of habitat. We're just going to go over a little bit who and what the NFPA is, what our role is in wildfire safety, what are Firewise principles, what are they, what can you do, and some actions that you can take. We also have a load of tools for you that are no cost that you can download and utilize at your convenience at home. So a little bit about the NFPA. The NFPA has been around for a long time, since 1896. We're located close to you in Quincy. Stop by if you ever want to visit sometime. We have 60,000 members. Many of our volunteers that you see, 6,000 of them, are firefighters and other very important people in the insurance industry, engineers that assist us developing our codes and standards. We have 275 technical code development committees. So if you're interested in all that technology, look on our website, www.nfpa.org, and we have some codes and standards that people are familiar with. How many people have heard of the NEC electrical codes? Okay, a few. How many people have heard of the NFPA before? A few, okay. Well, check it out and learn about us a little bit more. Michelle and I are part of the Wildfire Division, which is one department in the NFPA, and our sole purpose is to work with people and communities to help them reduce the risk from wildfire. NFPA is a recognized leader, and we do have some excellent information available for homeowners. So why do we care? Josh shared that a little bit too. Billions are spent annually on fire suppression. There's threats to public health and safety, and it's hard on the local governments to work with these wildfires, and it also affects our ecosystems. This is not just a California problem. Josh brought in some great pictures. This one was in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We were just there for our Backyards and Beyond program, and they have some serious wildfire issues there. This is in Bastrop, Texas. They also have wildfires, and a lot of them are started by grass fires. The type of fire Josh was talking about that kind of burn very quickly through communities. Grass fires can cause just as much damage to home as a forest fire because of the embers. Some of the solutions can be simple. This is not an infomercial, so you don't have to wait a long time to hear some of the solutions that will be helpful. On the left, you see a roof that has wood-shaped shingles, and it also has that nice pine needle kindling on it. So when an ember lands on a roof like this, it goes up very quickly. I had an Australian friend that asked me why people in California store their wood on their roof. It's not a good idea. But on the other roof here that you see on the right is from Arizona, and you can see where the roof is nice and clean. Look at the gutters. Those are nice and clean. And also you see that area around the wall and the ground. That's really important that you keep that 3 feet away from the side of the home, clear of flammable materials. So you don't want to have mulch in that area next to the home. This is a yard. These are actual photos that people let me take. The one on the right is in Ramona, California. The folks were developing a Firewise community, and they let people come and visit their yard to see how to space the plants and also to keep flammable materials away from the side of the house. The yard below is from the same community in Ramona. Notice all the places where embers could catch. I'm sure we all have little areas in our yard that look like that. But the problem is when a shed like this catches and it's close to the home, that can be an ignition point. And the radiant heat from that house, once the embers get in there, can also cause the home to burn. So you want to look around your yard like Josh was talking about for those outbuildings. How about your fence? Wooden fences are really nice, but when they're up close to the home and there's lots of material next to them, they can become ember catchers. And you don't want something flammable that's attached to your house. A solution is you can have your wood fence, but maybe that area right next to the house, make it some non-flammable material like wrought iron, something that's very pretty, rock facing next to the house. Josh also talked a little bit about limbing up trees. The one that you see on the right is a good example of a nice healthy tree that's limbed up. The one on the right here is mostly dead. Those are also a hazard to firefighters during a wildland fire. We talked about mulch. This was shared with us from a friend of ours in Missouri. Mulch can provide an ignition point for embers during a fire. You don't need the flame front to come up to the house. As you can see, a little mulch fire can cause a lot of damage to a home. All 3 of these pictures of wood piles are a bad example. Can someone tell me about what might happen with the one on the right with that flag on the roof? What do you think will happen? Anybody? What do you think will happen when the embers get in there? That's an awful lot of fuel, isn't it? Not much chance for that barn to last if that wood pile catches fire. And you look at the one in the bottom center, and you notice that there's also a kerosene can right next to that wood pile.